Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Mr. Pad Paramahamsa Padavajikacharya Ashtotar Tadashi Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Padavajikacharya Ashtotar Tadashi Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Shri Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Narayanam Namaskritya Narang Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jai Mudiriyat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Nara Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashtaprayesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan. And did I do that? No. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil, and loving devotion to the Supreme Lord, who is glorified in transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 17th day of January 2022 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in Canto 5, Chapter 12, Text 1, beginning a new chapter entitled Conversation between Maharaj Rahugana and Jadabharat. And we'll read the chapter summary first. Because Maharaj Rahugana was still doubtful about his enlightenment, he asked the Brahmin Jadabharata to repeat his instructions and clarify ideas he could not understand. In this chapter, Maharaj Rahugana offers his respectful obeisances to Jadabharat, who was concealing his real position. The king could understand by his speech, by Jadabharata's speech, how exalted and advanced he was in spiritual knowledge. He very much regretted his offense against him. Maharaj Rahugana was bitten by the serpent of ignorance, but was cured by the nectarian words of Jadabharat. Later, because he was doubtful about the subjects discussed, he made further inquiries, one question after another. First, he wanted to be released from the offense he had committed at the lotus feet of Jadabharat. Maharaj Rahugana was somewhat unhappy at not being able to grasp Jadabharata's instructions, which were full of meaning that could not be understood by a materialistic person. Therefore, Jadabharat repeated his instructions more clearly. He said that on the surface of the globe, all living entities, moving and unmoving, were but transformations of the earth in different ways. The king was very proud of his king's body, but that body was simply another transformation of the earth. Out of his false prestige, the king was misbehaving toward the palanquin carrier as a master toward a servant, and he was actually very unkind to other living entities. Consequently, King Rahugana was unfit to give protection to the citizens, and because he was ignorant, he was unfit to be counted among advanced philosophers. Everything in the material world is but a transformation of the earth, although things have different names according to their transformations. Actually, the varieties are one and the same, and ultimately all these varieties are vanquished into atoms. Nothing is permanent in this material world. The variety of things and their distinctions are simply mental concoctions. The absolute truth is beyond illusion and is manifest in three features: impersonal Brahman, localized Paramatma, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Ultimate realization of the absolute truth is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, called Vasudeva by his devotees. Unless one is blessed with the dust from the feet of a pure devotee on his head, one cannot possibly become a devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Jadabharata also told about his own previous birth and informed the king that by the grace of the Lord, he still remembered all the incidents of his past life. Due to the activities of his past life, Jadabharata was being very cautious and was therefore assuming the characteristics of a deaf and dumb man to avoid mingling with the material world. Association with the material modes of nature is very powerful. The bad association of materialistic men can be avoided only in the association of devotees. In the association of devotees, one is given an opportunity to render devotional service in 9 different ways. Shavanam kirtanam Vishnu, smaranam parasevanam, archanam bandhanam dasyam, sakyam atmanivedanam. In this way, in the association of devotees, one can pass over material association, cross over the ocean of nescience, and return home back to Godhead. Text 1. Rahugana Hovacha Namo Namaha Karana Vigrahaya Sarupa Tuchikuta Vigrahaya Namo Avaduta Vija Bandhulinga Nigudha Nityanubhavaya Tubhyam Rahugana Hovacha Namo Namakarana Vigrahaya Sarupa Tuchikuta Vigrahaya Namo Vaduta Vijabandhulinga Niguda Nityanubhavaya Tubhyam. Rahugana Hovacha Namo Namakarana Vigrahaya Sarupa Tuchi Krita Vigrahaya. Namo Vaduta Dvijabandhulinga. Nagudha Nityanu Babaya Tubhyam. Bahuganaho Vacha. Namo Namakarana Vigrahaya. Sarupa Tuchi Krita Vigrahaya. Namo Vaduta Dvijabandhulinga. Naguda Nityanu Babaya Tubhyam. Mahogano Vacha. Namo Namakarana Vigrahaya. Sarupa Tuchi Krita Vigrahaya. Namo Vaduta Dvijabandhulinga. Niguda Nityanu Babaya Tubhyam. Anyone else locally? Want to give it a shot? Mahugana Vacha. Namo Namakarana Vigrahaya. Sarupa Tuchi Krita Vigrahaya. Namo Vaduta Dvijabandhulinga. Naguda Nityanu Babaya Tubhyam. No? Not today? Zoom? Anyone on Zoom?
Rahugana Vacha.
Ladies first.
Thank you. Rahugana Vacha.
Rahugana Vacha.
Namo Namaha Karana Vigrahaya.
Namo Namaha Karana Vigrahaya.
Swarupa Tucha Krita Vigrahaya.
Swarupa Tuchi Krita Vigrahaya.
Namo Vaduta Dvijabandhulinga.
Namo Vaduta Dvijabandhulinga.
Niguda Nityanubhavaya Tubhyam.
Niguda Nityanubhavaya Tubhyam. Next.
Rahugana Vacha.
Rahugana Vacha.
Namo Namaha Karana Vigrahaya.
Namo Namaha Karana Vigrahaya.
Swarupa Tuchi Krita Vigrahaya.
Swarupa Tuchi Krita Vigrahaya.
Namo Vaduta Dvijabandhulinga.
Namo Vaduta Dvijabandhulinga.
Niguda Nityanubhavaya Tubhyam.
Naguda Nityanubhavaya Tubhyam. Rahugana Vacha. King Rahugana said, Namaha, my respectful obeisances. Namaha, obeisances. Karana Vigrahaya, to one whose body emanates from the Supreme Person, the cause of all causes. Sarupa, Tuchikrita, Vigrahaya, who has completely removed all the contradictions of the scriptures by manifesting his true self. Namaha, respectful obeisances. Avaduta, O master of all mystic power. Dvijabandhulinga, by the characteristics of a person born in a Brahmin family, but not executing the duties of a Brahmin. Nigudha, covered. Nitya Anubhavaya, to him whose eternal self-realization. Tubhyam, to you. Translation. King Rahugana said, O most exalted personality, you are not different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By the influence of your true self, all kinds of contradiction in the Shastras have been removed. In the dress of a friend of a Brahmin, you are hiding your transcendental blissful position. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Purport. From the Brahma Samhita, we understand that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the cause of all causes, Sarva Karana Karanam. Rishabhadev was the direct incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes. His son, Bharata Maharaj, who was now acting as the Brahman Jadabharata, had received his body from the cause of all causes. Therefore, he is addressed as Karana Vigrahaya. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Salakaya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and to all members of Sri Parampara. So, it's interesting that we heard in the previous chapter a whole disquisition by Jadabharata, mostly on the mind, how the mind is right from the Gita, the worst enemy of the living entity, and it can also be his best friend. And at the end, he gave the instruction of how to conquer the mind. Remember that? This uncontrolled mind is the greatest enemy of the living entity. If one neglects it or gives it a chance, it will grow more and more powerful and will become victorious. Although it is not factual, it is very strong. It covers the constitutional position of the soul. O king, please try to conquer this mind by the weapon of service to the lotus feet of the spiritual master and of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Do this with great care. Now, for those who are familiar with the teachings of Bhagavad Gita as it is, and Srila Prabhupada's books, and what we hear every day in class, this is a invaluable instruction, one that doesn't seem very mysterious, provided one can find a bona fide spiritual master and hear from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And yet we find that King Rahugana is puzzled. He still doesn't know exactly what to do. And so I was just contemplating as I was preparing for this class how fortunate we are that this last instruction of Rahugana, of Jadabharata, now he will expand on it, of course, as it's described in this introduction. And he will speak about the forest of material enjoyment and so many other things that are really bring home the way in which the materialistic mind can keep one bound to this life after life of suffering. But I was just thinking, okay, the weapon of service to the lotus feet of the spiritual master. And we say, oh, we're confident we have the bona fide spiritual master. Srila Prabhupada is there for all of us. When I say that I offer my obeisance unto the lotus feet of, was it Om Jnana Timirandasya, my spiritual master, I'm not just speaking about my spiritual master, but all of us can recognize Srila Prabhupada as a Shiksha Guru, which is, you read the first chapter, very first chapter of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's all about the gurus. And he very much emphasizes, yes, the Diksha Guru is one, but the Shiksha Gurus can be many, but the Diksha Guru and the bona fide Shiksha Guru have the same quality. They're transparent media for Krishna's message, and they can give it. So I was thinking how, and what I thought of was the teachings of Prahlad, because Prabhupada refers to that in this introduction, I think. Not the purport so much, but the introduction, how one cannot come to Krishna consciousness, get rid of the anarthas that are preventing you from even seeing the importance of taking up Krishna consciousness without taking a bath in the dust of the feet of the pure devotee. Remember that? So let's review those, because those instructions are very important, very significant and potent and pertinent here. So the context is Hiranyakashipu, one of Hiranyakashipu's confrontations with Prahlad, his interactions there, which are very instructive. So Hiranyakashipu wanted to know, where do you get your power from? Because he wasn't able to kill him, which was pretty amazing. He's this delicate little boy, but he was protected in so many ways from so much incredible threat, dropping him off a mountain, crushing him under the elephant, poison the serpents, and fire, and boiling oil, everything. Of course, weapons and spears and everything. So Prahlad has these three verses that Prabhupada would quote all the time. And Matir na Krishne paratak svatova mito vipadyete griha vatanam madanta gobhi vishatam tamisram punak punas charvita charvananam. And this idea of searching for happiness again and again and again in this material world and be frustrated, that's in this verse very graphically. So here he's saying, here's who can't become Krishna conscious, and Hiranyakashipu fits squarely into this category. Matir na Krishna, you can't place your mind on Krishna. If you either by your own effort or by getting together with others or somehow. Mito vipadyate griha vatanam. If one has taken a vow, maybe not a formal vow, but that's his mood, of trying to enjoy the insignificant pleasures of a materialistic household life. Griha vrata. Griha vrata means they're taking a vow to be griha. And what's the result? Adanta gobir. Your senses are out of control. Vishatam tamisram, and therefore you enter more and more into darkness. And what's the character of your life? This immortal phrase, punak punas charvita charvananam. Again and again chewing that which has been chewed. So the idea is that, what have you got? You're an enjoying soul. You're separate from Krishna. You're not serving Krishna. So you have your senses and you have your interactions and you have a certain configuration of object of the senses that appear attractive. For man, woman, for woman, man, that's the main attraction, but there's many thousands of others also. And so all you know, because you're anandamaya abhyasa, you're trying to enjoy, is the interaction of the senses with the sense objects, and your senses are out of control. You don't have any higher intelligence or any way of controlling that. You don't even know you should be controlled. So you, again and again, you try to enjoy that which you've already enjoyed in this life and previous life. Chewing the chewed in different ways. Oh, this is a different variety, see. Forgetting all the births and deaths and all of these things. So that's punak punas charvita charvananam. And then he described, this verse he would quote most often of the three, there's three verses. Nate, they, we described in the previous verse, total materialists. Nate vadu svarta katimi vishnum. Now this is a very important phrase, svarta. Swarta means the goal of the real goal of the soul. Probably use the word self-interest in this context. Self-interest has a bad connotation, that I'm always self-interested, I don't care about others. But Prabhupada gave it a good connotation. If you really know your real self-interest, then you become a devotee. That he said the real self-interest is Vishnu, service to Vishnu, understanding Krishna, and reawakening that relation to Vishnu. So they, who we just described, the materialistic householders who are again and again chewing the chewed and are completely in darkness, have no idea that this is the goal of life. Svarta katim hi Vishnu. Nate vidu, they don't know. So what do they have? What is their goal? Durashayaye bahirata manina. The minds are always absorbed in trying to achieve that which is unachievable. Durashaya means the hope against hope, Prabhupada. Bahirarta. The goals of the senses, of the materialistic mind, of all kinds of concoctions, social things, just like India, we'll get liberation from India, from England. That was a big goal, and people said, yes, I'll even give my life for this goal. This is called Bahirarta. All right, so they achieved it. But they didn't achieve happiness from it. It was the Pakistani wars and the thing, and it's still the threefold miseries are still there, right? So it's bahirarta mayana, andaya tandaya. You've got the blind leading the blind. You have others who have these same goals and are in the roles of instructors, beginning with parents and then as teachers, religious leaders, political leaders, people who have influence. They're all blind, and the poor citizenry are being led along, blind leading the blind. And everyone remains tightly bound by the strong ropes of the three modes of nature, te pisha tantra. So what's the solution to this? Exactly what Jadabharata has described. One has to one has to get the association of a sadhu. This is the sadhu, right? Welcome. Nice to see you. Hare Krishna Jananivas. I'm sorry, Jananivas. Does everyone ever call you that? Or is it Jananivas? Jananivas. But he's Jananivas. Anyway, I'm just kidding. That's the way it's a lot of people. Alternate pronunciation. So, we're at the very beginning of chapter 12 of the 5th canto, if you're interested. So what does Prahlad say? Naisham matistava rurukramangring spishachanata pagamo yadata mahiya sambhara rajo vishekam nishkinchananam navanita yavat. So here you have yavat tavat. This is an important pair in Sanskrit. This is yata tata. This is the classic way of illustrating an analogy. Just as the soul passes through the body, boy to use to old age, similarly the soul gets another body at death. It's all over our Shastra. It's a way of learning. There's also yavatavat, which is usually used negatively, means if you don't do this, you won't get this. Or rather, until you do this, you won't get that. So this is one of those verses. Naishamatis tavat. You can have tavat first. Naishamatis tavat urukramangrim. Means, don't forget, the whole subject is placing your mind on Krishna. The materialistic householders, deep in ignorance, trying to solve their senses, they can't become Krishna conscious. They're too busy chewing the chewed. But here's those who can. Na esham matis tavad urukramang. You can't place your mind on Krishna, which gets rid of all your anarthas. Naisham tavat urukramangrim. Urukramangrim means the lotus feet of Urukama. Was the name for Krishna, the great stepper, Vamana. Sprishati, your mind cannot touch. You can't think of it. Anartha bhagamo yadartha. It's a play on words. You can't get the benefit, the artha, of getting rid of all your unarthas. You see how that? By becoming Krishna conscious. Until and unless you take a bath in the foot dust of a pure devotee. Naishamatisa Mahiyasam Padarajo Abhishekam. Abhishek is a bath. Padaraja is foot dust. And Mahiyasam are these Mahatmas, the great devotees, the sadhus, the pure devotees. Nishkinchananam, who are characterized by being completely free of material desire. Navanita Yavat. So that's more or less the gist here of Jadabhart's instruction. That King Rahugan is deep in the illusion that I am the king, I am the master, and now he's realized that Jadabhart is not just a peon, he's not just a foolish, he's pretending to be that because he started speaking. Now, I brought up this point before, but it's worth bringing up again because it's been a while. You notice how he didn't speak. He didn't speak at all. Because he didn't want to get entangled. He didn't want to get entangled in the association of the other materialistic members of his family. Even though they're Brahmins, So he wouldn't speak, and he would seem to be jada. Jada means dumb in both ways. You don't speak, and you don't have anything to say. You're stupid. So that protected him. Of course, then he was kidnapped by the worshippers of Kali. You know that story, but he was saved from that. So then he's just wandering around, and he gets drafted, if you will, into this job of carrying the palanquin, because he's very strong, very well built, But he doesn't want to kill any ants, so that doesn't work with carrying a palanquin. You have to be. So he causes all this disturbance for the king, and they don't know. He doesn't know yet, and so he starts berating him and insulting him. So Jadabharta sees a chance to preach, and because he's a king. Prabhupada is always eager to meet leaders because leaders have influence. Now we have so many influencers, TikTok and everything. But we have big influences of millions and millions of people. That's worth, making the effort. So he broke his silence. And as soon as he opened his mouth, Rahugna says, oh my God, he's not Jada. He's wise. He's a sadhu. So he gets down, because he's pious king, even though he gets down, offers obeisances, and has this conversation. And so Jadabhart has instructed him. So now the weapon of service at the lotus feet of the spiritual master can destroy the bondage of ignorance that covers everybody. So, and it's essential to have that contact, because otherwise you'll be influenced by everyone else. There needs to be that adau shraddha, to come into the association of real sadhus, devotees, who are themselves pure devotees, or they're representing. Just like all this book distribution. The book distribution means you're presenting Prabhupada, or those who follow Prabhupada and are giving the same message. The message is there, coming from the pure devotee. You're giving the association. Now, people may then take it. They may take a book, but whether they open it and read it or not, we know that may not happen. It may go on the shelf and fall off and knock the person's child in the head, and then that for 15 years old they open it and become a devotee. That's happened. But the point is, it gives people a chance to get that association. And that's exactly what Jadabharat says here at the end of the last verse of the previous chapter. Please try to conquer this mind by the weapon of service to the lotus feet of the spiritual master and of the Supreme Personality. Do this with great care. So that service begins with hearing. As soon as someone opens a book written by Prabhupada, Bhagavad Gita or some other book, and they're reading with some attention, that's a form of service. That's the most important service. The beginning of service is hearing. And hearing, reading, the same thing. And of course, there's so much else going on in the mind. The person has so many other, it may not immediately fructify, and they're taking the next step of trying to search out the temple, or search it out on the internet, or somehow you're becoming curious. But the potency is there. We've heard so many incredible stories of the potency of Prabhupada's words, completely revolutionizing people's lives, as we've experienced ourselves. And why is that? Because it's the absolute truth in both meanings. Sometimes, the absolute truth is sometimes written with a small a and t, meaning this is the absolute truth. You're a spirit soul, you're not that body, you're related to the Supreme Spirit Soul. That sense of absolute. Or the absolute truth is Krishna himself. We know that. So until one, and unless one gets that mercy of association through the words and instructions of the pure devotee, then it's practically impossible to come to that realization. There's no way of doing it on one's own. One's completely covered. The senses are imperfect. This is why Krishna is known as Adhokshaja. Anyone remember what that word means? Vijay, you remember? Adhokshaja. Anyone else? Binan?
Conquerable.
No, not unconquerable. Yeah. It's made of 3 words combined. Sanskrit is such a beautiful language. Ada, Aksha, and Ja. So Ja is short for birth. It's always birth, like Janma. Okay. Aksha Ja, the eyes, and also all the other senses. The word stands in for all the senses. So Aksha Ja is knowledge born of the material senses. And it only goes so far. But that's what we're living in. The material world means, oh yeah, we got these telescopes now. They just spent billions sending up another telescope so we can get more information about the, They don't even know who they are, what the goal of life is, and they're out. The intention is outside, trying to expand these material senses. So that knowledge is Ada, is pushed down by Krishna. In other words, he's transcendental to it. Another nice phrase is Avan Manasa Gochara. I remember hearing this phrase like one of the first few days I was living in the temple. Avan Manasa Gochara. Gochara means accessible, reachable. And Van means vak, or words. Manasa means mind. And this is Avan Manasa Gochara. He's not accessible by the material words and mind. In other words, transcendental. That's the actual meaning of transcendental. So how are you going to understand anything about something which is beyond the reach of your mind and senses? Not by your mind and senses, not by some extraordinary effort. It has to be received. That's revelatory. That's a basic principle of our philosophy. And that revelation comes through the chain of disciplic succession. Either directly by oral words, which are most potent, but in today's world, mostly through written words, which eventually attract you to chant. In other words, it all comes down to the sound. So that's what he's describing here. You have a weapon. The whole problem is the mind, the conditioned mind over many, many lifetimes. The mind has become our worst enemy. We're living with the worst enemy. Udadet atmanatmanam, natmanam vasariyet. Atmaivadatmano bandhu, atmaivadatma. This is right from the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. One should elevate oneself by the mind, not degrade oneself. The mind is the best friend of the living enemy and the worst enemy. The controlled mind, which is fixed on Krishna by higher intelligence and the self, is your best friend. But that's not the nature of the conditioned soul. The mind has so many latent, impressions in this life from previous life, and getting all new ones all the time from through the senses, but not perceiving at all the spirit, and completely unaware of the soul. This is the mind and the intelligence. So that mind needs to be conquered. And it only can be conquered by the soul who has strengthened its intelligence by hearing this knowledge. And that's only in the human form, obviously. These lower forms, they don't have the intelligence. So that's what we're doing. Every time we have a class, or we attend class, we read, we hear, we think, we repeat the message, which is important. We're strengthening our intelligence and getting the strength to control that mind and train the mind. The whole idea is to train the mind to give up the attachment to all of these relative things, the dualities, and to become attached to Krishna. Or rather to become a medium by which the soul can reawaken its attraction to Krishna. And then you see the beautiful result is that when the mind is trained, it spontaneously remembers Krishna. You hear devotees like, I'm sure, you have, they have dreams, and the dream is about their service. So many pujaris, we used to sleep, all the brahmacharis, you're sleeping in one room. And suddenly, Krishna Das is sleeping, but he's offering arti. I can see he's offering arti there. Yeah. That's auspicious. And then when you're awake, the mind reminds you, do this, do this, do this. And then there's so much training to be done. I mean, everyone is aware that, I've been memorizing these slokas for years. But they become agents by which can help you to remember Krishna. And the beauty of it, just like Krishna is beautiful, right? And so inconceivably beautiful. We see the deities are beautiful, and they make an effort to dress them beautifully, and they're attractive. And everything about Krishna is first class. In the spiritual world, we try to, do as best we can in the cooking and the presentation and everything. So that's also true for the sound. These 6 Goswamis, they wrote so much. We hear about incredible writing. This is one of the reasons they hardly got any sleep. They're always writing the Shastra, 100,000 verses, and then not editing. Jiva Goswami is inconceivable. But when I've delved a little bit into the Gopal Champu, and I heard this about him not editing and writing in such a way that there's no way to change, and then to realize that these songs, like I'll give you an example of one song. It's a song describing Krishna coming back and Balaram coming back and being pampered by Mother Yashoda and fed and put to bed after killing Dhenukasura. And here's I'll just give you the refrain of the song. It's a very short song, but just hear the artistry of it. Harina harina sahatupadalina rajani mukamana janani ladatamintikaditam jitakalina. Now he wrote that and he didn't change a word, didn't change a syllable. So Harina is Hari, and that's Krishna, and Halina is he who carries the plow. That's Balaram. So little Balaram, little Krishna. They're 6, 7 years old maybe. Harina halina sahudupudalina. So Krishna was with Balaram, who destroys his enemies, rips them apart. Ripu dalina. Dalina is the ripping, Ripu is the enemy. Rajani Mukham. When the face of night has appeared, that's the evening time. Said to be the very beautiful time. It's just Harina halina sahudupudalina. Rajani Mukham anu janani lalanam. Janani is the mother, that's Yashoda. Lalanam is pampering in various ways. Atikalitam jitakali, very expertly, and then this word describing Krishna, jitakalina, he who destroys or conquers all of your sinful reactions. And it goes on, 2 or 3 verses, how I didn't know this, it's not in the Bhagavatam. Nirmanchana, she prepared for the arati, then she does a little arati for them. You know that? She does a little arati, simple dup arati. And then she wipes off their faces all the dust, and then she massages them. Then she has a full bath, marjana, and finally puts on the tilak, like that. It's all described there by this little song. So here's Jiva Goswami, the greatest philosopher who ever lived, meditating on these wonderful little pastimes and giving us a way to relish it in the most beautiful way. No video needed, no internet, no nothing needed. You know, it's just the sound. If you hear the sound and you're able to absorb it, you can take that with you anywhere. So this is how we train the mind. Prabhupada wanted us not to hear and to understand, to discuss, and live by these vibrations, these words that he wrote. But he also wanted us to chant the Sanskrit. There's a whole section, there's a whole pastime in Japan, I think it's Japan, after he left L.A., and he was with devotees for some time, and they were reading the second canto, beginning of the second canto. The books came out. He was so eager to get these books out that he had us print chapter by chapter. So he had the first chapter, you know, the small, you can imagine what a chapter is, it's a paperback. And so they're reciting the verses, and he wanted everyone to memorize them. So each class, everyone was reciting how many they memorized. After a while, the class was going on and on because it was like 10, 11 verses. And he wanted everyone to chant them, you know, and so forth. So one thing I would encourage you to, if you're not, it's too difficult to memorize verses, at least study in the songbook the word by words for the verses that we sing all the time, like the Mangal Arti. And I just want to go over the first one, because that has to do with the spiritual master and how he is destroying our bondage to this world, basically by giving us a way to conquer the mind and saving us from the burning fire of the material world. So this is this samsara dava nalalidha loka tranaya karunya ganaganatvam. So samsara we know, right? That's birth and death, that's the suffering. And it's compared here to a davanala. Now the word anala means fire. That's the fire. Dava is the forest. And lidha means suffering. And loka means people. Loka. So all the people, including us, are suffering birth after birth in this blazing forest fire of material life. The amazing thing is people don't realize it. They're in this suffering condition, but they're looking at ways to forget their suffering by some sense gratification or some drug or some experience like that. So it's just like probably like the rabbit putting his head in the, you know, the lion is coming at him and there's no way of getting away. He says, okay, you know, I'll put my head in the sand. Maybe, you know, forget it. Boom, finished. That's material life. Death is coming at us, you know, and we don't know how long we're going to live. I mean, the geopolitical condition is so crazy. The climate, we just had this big eruption in the ocean of a volcano. There was a tsunami warning even here. It doesn't materialize really much. Who knows what's going on, you know? I mean, I like to bring up this sometimes because it was a critical experience in my life, and that was the Cuban Missile Crisis. You were old enough to remember that. I don't think anyone else here was. 62. So I was 14, and you know, to me it was like this was it. I mean, I'd been thinking about this for a long time because I was, you know, always politically aware that this may happen, and now it looks like it's going to happen. The Russians are steaming toward Cuba, and we got it blockaded, and there's going to be a conflict, and you know, then bombs will go off. And you know that song? Everyone knows Dylan's song, "A Hard Rain is Going to Fall." He wrote that in New York City during this time. A hard rain is the bombs. Anyway, obviously, there was a resolution. But the bombs are still there. And now there's the confrontation and going on in Ukraine that's in a similar mood. Instead of the Russians being in our face, we're in their face. We've got weapons up there. We're bringing in, want to come into NATO on their border, you know. And so it's been absolutely luck, and we know it's no luck. It's Krishna's arrangement that we haven't blown up till now. I can give you 30 or 40 near misses that just. So the point is that we may all be, you know, terminal right now. You know, 1 week, 2 weeks, a month. So what are we doing? We have to have that urgency. You know, when devotees understand that, okay, it's all over, then they say, okay, that's it. I'm chanting. You know, I'm going to Vrindavan if I can. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. That's just like Pariksit. This whole book is being spoken with that kind of urgency because Pariksit Maharaj is sitting there. The time is ticking. He's not eating. He's not sleeping. He's not drinking. He's just listening. Drinking. He's drinking the Bhagavatam. So we should have that kind of urgency about our own Krishna consciousness. And that curbing the mind from its latent, stubbornness and wandering away from Krishna, taking more shelter of the holy name, all of the facilities we've been given that are there everywhere. And in this way, try to conquer this mind by the weapon of service to the lotus feet of the spiritual master. In other words, that's the only means, as according to Prahlad Maharaj. That's what it means to bathe oneself in the foot dust. It means service. And service begins with hearing, study the books. And just to finish this verse, so the spiritual master is like a cloud of mercy extinguishing this forest fire. Davan loka tranaya. Tranaya is delivering. He's delivering us from that forest fire. Anyone who wants that mercy, who's willing to take it, can be delivered. So these karunya ganaganatvam. Karunya means mercy, like a cloud of mercy. The cloud will extinguish the forest fire. Praptasya kalyana gunanabhasya. He's attained the state of being an ocean full of auspicious qualities. And Vande Guroshi Charanarabindam. So, surrendering to the lotus feet means being willing to listen, take the word Guru Mokha Padma Bhaka Chitta Tekodaya Aika Arnakodaya Monayasha. For me, that's other song we sing for the Guru song, Prabhupada called it at 7:20. That's the most important line. The words emanating from the mouth of the spiritual master, and it's interesting, Prabhupada practically dictated all these books, so it's directly there on the page. Chitte te kodeya aikya, make them one with your heart and don't desire anything else. That's how we curb the mind. That's how we do it. It is by strengthening the intelligence. And I'll end with this one quote. You've heard it before, but it's worth hearing again and again. And this is from Madhavendra Puri, I believe. It's quoted by Lord Chaitanya in the instructions to Sanatana Goswami, in Abhideya, the practice. You know this one. Kama dinang katina katita palita dunideshas tesham jata mayana karuna natrapano prashantihi utrijaitan hadayatupate sampratam lamna buddhis tvamayatak shadanam abhayam mam niyung swatmadasye. In how many ways have I sought to obey the seductive demands of my wicked desires? They've shown me no mercy. Yet on I've gone shamelessly trying to quench lust's unquenchable fires. But now I'm rejecting these hellish desires, for my higher intelligence now has awoken. O Krishna, O shelter of fearlessness, please let me serve you with faith that will never be broken. And we awaken that higher intelligence by serving the lotus feet of the spiritual master, chiefly through hearing and chanting. Any questions or comments locally?
Hare Krishna.
Oh, wait, just let me see. Okay, go ahead, Vijay, Krishna.
Yes.
Bob, you have something? Okay, go ahead.
Yes, Dravida Prabhu, thank you very much. You're very kind. The quote from the translation is, quote, by the influence of your true self, all kinds of contradiction in the Shastras have been removed. End quote. So based on this quote, my question is as follows. If you know better than me that the Shastras are not different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, so how can I accommodate the fact that here we find King Rahugana declaring that the Shastras are no better than contradictory?
The idea is that the contradictions are seeming contradictions. How can they be removed? What's removed is the illusion of the contradictions. In other words, the Shastra is what it is. If there are contradictions, there are contradictions, but really there aren't any contradictions. They may appear to us to be contradictions, but then by the explanation, by the revelation of the great acharyas, we will, this is not contradictory. I mean, just like achintya beta beta tattva. It's the reason why it's called achintya, inconceivable. How can Krishna be everything and at the same time be aloof? And then he says, just see my mystic opulence. It says at the beginning of the 9th chapter. I'm there everywhere, but at the same time I'm in Goloka Vrindavan enjoying, you see. So to the material mind, it appears like a contradiction. If you're here, you're not there. If you're there, you're not here. But because of our ignorance and illusion, we think it's but it's resolved. So that's what he's talking about here. There's no contradiction, and the seeming contradictions are removed by the influence of your true self. In other words, by Jada Bharat revealing that he's really a pure devotee full of knowledge. That's the way I understand this, Prabhu. Okay?
Oh, thank you very much, Dravida Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Yeah. Bhakta Bob.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. I know that I've commented on this more than once, but when I hear you explain this sloka, Einstein's words, you cannot fix a problem with the same mindset that created it. So especially, I guess, if the mind created it.
Yeah.
That just keeps resonating time after time after time.
Well, the idea is that the mind isn't fixing itself. You, the living entity, are actually victimized by your own mind. I mean, this becomes very obvious when you have some addiction, right? Addiction. Of course, that's also a physical thing, but the point is that it's not you. You're being dragged along. Just like we have that famous picture in the Bhagavad Gita in the chariot. The poor souls in this chariot, the intelligence is trying to hold the mind's, the reins of the mind, but the senses are ultimately controlling the mind and pulling in here and there, and the poor soul is victimized by that. He's lost his agency. So it's not that the same mind is going to save you. The mind is an inanimate thing, but it has become conditioned. That's what a condition means. Is that all of these desires and the fears and it's the different variety of illusion. But that mind, if that's your main influence, and for most people that is, the senses and the mind are pulling them everywhere, then you're in trouble. Then you're bound up and you just get more and more entangled. So what is the higher power that can save us? You know, Krishna. Through the agency of the spiritual master, through the Shastra, we can, the intelligence, that's what we have going for us as human beings. That's different from the animals. The animals are hopeless. They have no chance. But we can understand the philosophy, and then we can apply the process. Because what is this chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, again and again and again, and absorbing the mind. The idea is that the mind is wandering here and there, but you force it to hear the holy name, and you direct it. And over some time, the purification takes place. And after some time, it becomes the sweetest of the sweet. I mean, there's so many verses how the holy name is the sweetest of the sweet. But sometimes we find ourselves, our minds wandering, falling asleep with chanting the rounds. We're not experiencing it as the sweetest of the sweet, but we know we should struggle and chant. And so that it's a way of purifying the consciousness, Cheto Darpana Marjanam, so that the mind then no longer has this, is in thrall. Enthrall means under control of the modes of nature, you see. So it's like, you can't, you have an atrophied muscle. You can't pick up a big barbell and do everything with it. But if you gradually strengthen it by the right process, at a certain point, that same arm will work in a different way. That's the way it is with the mind.
Yeah, you mentioned addiction. It's funny because the 12-step programs.
Yeah.
All of them dictate that that we have to recognize a higher power to restore us to sanity.
Exactly.
So.
You don't know that I spoke at the one up the street here.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, we had a devotee. What was his name? No one's here.
Right.
He was Kind of a bhakta, but not much.
This was a while back, right?
Yeah, 12 years.
Yeah.
And so he said, you should give a talk up there. And usually it's like, my name is Dravida Das, and I'm an alcoholic. But I've been clean for 54 years. You see, I have this, usually it's like, 6 months, maybe 2 years, they have these, but there are a lot of similar things that go on there. First of all, the association recognizing the problem, you know. Janma mrityu jara vyadi dukkha darshana darshanam. This is Krishna saying you have to recognize the problem. You have birth, old age, disease, and death. And so we need a solution. So anyway, there's similarities, getting the spiritual strength and higher power. They try not to be sectarian, so they don't name, but obviously it's God. So we can get God, God can help us. Krishna wants to help us. But we have to do it in the proper way, especially by bathing ourselves in the foot dust of the pure devotee and get Krishna's mercy that way. Okay, anyone else? Okay, thank you. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. You're all invited for tonight's class at 7:15.